This morning, I'm thinking about distractions, and it seems like we are addicted to being distracted in so many different ways. It really starts to be a hindrance. What if we didn't have anything to complain about? Let's just think about this. We start looking at political stuff, we get into it. Maybe it's prepping for if something goes wrong. It's getting ready for something that we need to prepare for. It's all of these sort of doom and gloom kind of scenarios that capture our attention. We find out that something bad happened in the world, and then we're scrolling our news feed. And is it really because we need to know more about what's going on in the world, or is it because we just want entertainment by finding more juicy gossip? And it's really unhealthy, but we do this a lot. I know I've done it a lot. You just go down the rabbit hole of reading more bad news and watching content creators talk about things that are not going right, or things that are worth raging about or getting mad about or getting fired up about, and putting your 2 cents in. And our lives get really filled up with that stuff, and it's just a lot of noise. It's not that anybody cares about any of that. That's not what it's about. It's not because we really care. It's because we just want a distraction in our lives. And that's the truth of why so many of us get wrapped up in political debates and in following bad news and all of this other stuff. And on the surface, we would say, well, it's because the issues matter. But that's not really true. I'm not saying the issues don't matter, but the reason why we actually care about them is because we're addicted to distraction. Because if we weren't complaining about what was wrong in the world and moaning about what somebody did, or what some social media personality is doing, or whatever the thing might be, then we would have to face the quietness of our lives, and that's not something we're willing to do. So we're going to go log into our social media platform of choice and start consuming that media. And we don't even think that we're doing this, because we think this stuff matters. But it's really apparent that if we didn't get wrapped up in all this stuff, we wouldn't have anything to do, right? I mean, that's the truth. And we don't want to face that. So we'd rather distract ourselves and act like we're important by being armchair generals to always have our 2 cents to weigh in on whatever thing is going on in the world. Now, by all means, there's a place for being well informed. I'm not saying you shouldn't know what's going on in the world. But the degree to which you need to spend time consuming media so that you can be well informed is much less than what you might think. If I have a few investments and I keep track of those, how long does it take for me to read the news headlines? See what the stock market did. See what commodities are doing. Look at the current price for a few different stocks that I'm following. It's not like that stuff takes very long. Not very long compared to spending a whole lot of time going down the rabbit hole of just scrolling endlessly through Google News, right? Anyway, that leads me to the other side of this distraction conversation, and that is how difficult it is to just be present in something. And I know a lot of us would want to ascribe this to a personality issue. Like we'd say, well, I don't have a really long attention span, or whatever it might be. But the reality is a lot of this is because of technology and a sort of a conditioning that we have allowed to happen to us, or maybe we've just done it to ourselves. We don't have a willingness to just be present in one thing and to take our time. I couldn't tell you how many times I have found myself scrolling through stuff I don't even care about, like short videos on YouTube, just watching one after the next, or looking at my Steam library of games and reading the developer updates or whatever it might be. Just kind of mindlessly distracted by something. And then I wonder, why is it that that game I have had in my library, I've never actually played through it? You know, I've never really gotten as far in a hobby as I wanted. I didn't get around to writing that book I wanted to start working on. You know, like there's all this stuff I haven't done. And why? Is it because I spent too much time playing games? No. Like the funny thing is, distraction actually cuts into my ability to enjoy playing games. Because instead of playing a game and really being mindful and present in it, I'm down that rabbit hole of distraction. And we live in a time where being distracted is the norm. So much that we don't even think that it's unusual. We think it's unusual if we're not distracted. So to just take a few hours and sit down and work your way through some quests in an RPG, or be immersed in that city builder of choice, or just sit down with pen and paper or at your computer or whatever and write for a few hours, like whatever it might be, the thought of just taking some time and being mindful and being slow, if you will, it bothers us. And we think that that's because we're important. But it's really just because we're distracted. It's because we've gotten addicted to short-term stimuli. Because if it's 30 seconds, then it's got our attention. But if it takes more than 30 seconds, then we're starting to get bored. We're getting bored before we can even get a sentence out of our mouth. And then we wonder, why do we not enjoy gaming anymore? Why do we not enjoy our hobbies? Why do we struggle to get traction on things? It's because we fill our lives with distractions and we're not willing to devote any significant amount of time into one thing so that we can actually have a sense of accomplishment and completion. So my challenge to myself is to start to combat this by saying, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of watching YouTube on autoplay. I'm going to take one game I want to play and I'm going to just sit there and I'm going to play it. And I'm going to work through some content. Sometimes maybe I'll even, just put on I'll hit the record button. Maybe I'll play a game and then I'll upload the content of the play session. Because if I'm making a video about a game, then I'm not doing a bunch of other things on the side. I'm not distracted. I'm actually paying attention. I'm being mindful in the moment of what I'm doing. I'm not playing the game while I think about the next thing I'm going to do, / watch a YouTuber on the side, and then lose interest after 10 minutes and wind up just vegetating there, not actually doing any content, just scrolling through something on my second monitor, that kind of thing. But learning to be present and mindful, to just do one thing at a time, can be a really empowering, really ennobling experience. But once you try to do it, you start realizing how difficult it is. And then you realize, okay, you know what? I guess I do kind of have a problem, and I need to work through this. I need to let some things go so that I can have that serenity in my life instead of being constantly defined by distractions. Sometimes you just, stop watching the news, stop scrolling the social media, stop worrying about all that stuff, and then just be present in something that you have chosen to do. And sometimes you have to work through this initial feeling of wanting to be bored with something. Like you're just not really feeling it in the moment. But then if you actually power through and you discipline yourself to say, you know what, I sat down, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to just do it for 5 minutes and then move on to the next thing. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have a real honest to goodness session where I'm mindful and I'm focused. Then after a little bit, it starts to get easier. I find it's that way with writing a lot. You can think, oh, I'm not in the mood for it. But then if you actually turn off the distractions and then you're just sitting there and you're mindful and you're immersed in it, then after a while, then it's the other way around. Then you're doing it. And then next thing you know, a few minutes can turn into a few hours and you say, oh, wow, I actually got something done here. But you have to break through that initial feeling of wanting to be bored and then wanting to divert back to being distracted. And I think that really it's twofold. Partly it's discipline. It's discipline because if you aren't willing to deliberately change your behaviors, you're not going to get different results. But then the other part is to be honest about other things that on the face value don't necessarily seem like distractions, like being distracted by the news or getting wrapped up in political debates or something. Things that seem on the surface like maybe they're a genuine part of your identity or your personality. But if you dig just a little bit deeper, you'll realize that they're just distractions. They're just things that you're doing for entertaining yourself, and they're not really anything other than just noise that you're consuming. Like all this stuff going on with, trans stuff and this Bud Light thing and everybody's like, corporations are all doing some kind of woke gay ads, and then all the conservatives are freaking out and they're complaining about this, and the lefties have something to say about it, and this whole big debate. Okay, so sure. Do I care about this? No, I really don't. I do not care. I don't even drink beer, right? I don't care what the lefties have to say. I don't care what the right side of the argument has to say. I don't care about any of it. That's the truth. It's a non-issue to me. But it's easy to get into it because, next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole of a bunch of videos that people have made about this. And then, I'm not going to get my time back, right? Like how long does it take watching a bunch of stupid videos about something like that? And the next thing you know, I haven't gotten through that game content I was thinking about doing, or haven't spent time on some other hobby I was wanting to do, but I found time to sink an hour into some kind of lame political rambling, right? And we don't even realize we're doing this stuff. And people people are just trying to draw attention to themselves. That's what they're doing by selling distraction. And everybody has their own brand of it. But it's kind of like an alcoholic who wants to stop being an alcoholic by consuming a different kind of alcohol. You know what? I'm not going to be a whiskey person. I'm just going to drink beer and wine. I don't know, but that ain't how it works, right? Like you gotta let go of the actual principle of it if you're going to move forward. And I don't care what it is you've been consuming. You have to let it go. And then when you let it go, you realize, oh, I have plenty of time now. And then you have to face the next thing, which is, what do you do with that time? Can you be satisfied and content and at peace when you eliminate all of the things that have made you feel busy? Because there's a lot of people, they complain about being busy. They complain about how they never have time. They complain about all the things that are in their way, keeping them from being able to be their true self. But if you take all those things away and you give them a chance to actually be their true self, they don't have any sense of identity. Because they want all that stuff. They want all the things to complain about and rant about and all the things that take up their time needlessly, because they don't really want to face the reality of silence. They can't do that because they don't know who they are. All they know is how to be an extension of whatever noise surrounds them. So embrace the silence and learn to be okay with doing nothing. Learn to be okay with a day of not checking the news feed, a day of no social media, a day of not reading the news. Go ahead and be informed, but don't use distraction as a form of entertainment. Instead, invest your time in things that actually matter to you. Things that really, truly capture a sense of wonder, that sense of adventure. Things that really bring joy into your life. And if you don't know what those things are, then continue to be silent long enough to reflect until you have an answer to that. It's not a one and done kind of a thing. It's a work that's always in progress, trying to find that sense of balance in our lives. You don't have to find it all at once, but you can start by eliminating the big rocks that are barriers to self-discovery and obstacles to peace. And I definitely think when you let go of some of that stuff, you're also going to be in a better frame of mind in terms of just being a positive person and being a good influence in other people's lives. Because somebody who's distracted is not going to be a good friend. They're not going to be a good influence. It's like if you went to a restaurant with somebody, or you were just having coffee or something, and then like this guy just can't, ever put his phone down, right? So you're hanging out with a friend and they're just glued to the phone. At what point are you going to kind of think to yourself, gee, can you go 35 seconds without looking at the phone, maybe? Not saying I care that much, but it's a little bit obnoxious. Like, how important are you that your phone has to be in your hand 24/7? Like, God forbid you go 60 seconds without checking your screen again. But in the mind of that person, they're just doing themselves. They're doing what they need to be doing, right? They don't see it as an addiction to distraction, but it is. And it ruins the actual moment they're in, because they're so busy being distracted by things that don't really matter. So it's something to think about. It's something to kind of fight against. It's something to look at your life and say, how can I change my routines and change what I'm putting into my daily life so that I actually am getting, a sense of value out of the things I'm doing. It is not fun to have a day off or to go on vacation or to know that you have some time and then have that frustrated feeling of, there's all this stuff I've talked about doing, and then yet again, I never got around to it. And we blame the easy things to blame. But usually the thing we really need to blame is ourselves. Sure, it's easy to go out and say, well, it's because my job never gives me time. Okay, well, maybe. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. But do you think maybe the 15 hours a week of YouTube videos that you watched, do you think that might have something to do with it too? Right? Like, I know the busiest people I know, the most important people, busy with their careers, self-important, all of the above, still find plenty of time to watch YouTube videos and go down the rabbit hole of all the, political stuff and complaining about what's going on in the world and what some, politician is doing and what other people are doing. And they have plenty of time to complain and to meddle and waste their time on that kind of stuff. Like, maybe they don't have time for hobbies or they don't have time for their family, but they have plenty of time to complain. Like, if you get all that time back, that would be something right there. Sometimes you got to slow down so you can speed up. And that is a lesson. As the old saying goes, festina lente. Make haste slowly. So, good luck. Find peace, joy in whatever you're doing. Till next time. Thank you for watching.